Wonderful, thank you. All right, so today's webinar is designed to help prospective applicants to the Climate Adaptation Fellowship better understand our program. We're going to provide some background for applicants, as well as answer your questions related to the program. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues, Erin Lane of the USDA Climate Hub and Marjorie Kaplan, Rutgers University, who, along with myself, serve on the leadership team for the Northeast Climate Adaptation Fellows Program. The program is being funded by Northeast SARE, as well as the USDA Northeast Climate Hub, Rutgers University Climate Institute, and the New Jersey Agriculture Experiment Station. And we thank them all for their support. Other than myself and the CAF team, you are all muted. So to communicate with us, please type your questions into the chat box. To find the chat box, hover your mouse at the bottom of your screen and a series of circles will be displayed. There is one circle that looks like a dialog bubble, and if you click on that, the chat will come up and you can type your questions there. You're welcome to type your questions into the chat box throughout today's presentation. Please type into the All Panelists box. We are monitoring the questions as they come in, and after the formal presentation, we'll address them. We're also recording today's webinar and will alert you to its availability and post it on the Climate Adaptation Fellows website. And we'll also post a list of frequently asked questions that will be updated periodically as additional questions come in prior to the October 1st application deadline. So with that, I'm going to get going with the presentation. As soon as I figure out how to advance, there we go. So along with myself and Erin, who's there on the left, and Marjorie, who's next to her, we have a great team of educators that are part of this program. Lily Calderwood is the UMaine Extension Blueberry Specialist. Caleb Gosson is with MOFGA, the Maine Organic Farming and Gardening Association. And Joshua Faulkner is with the University of Vermont Extension. In brief, our program has some pretty exciting components to it. The overall design of the program is to help farmers and agricultural advisors learn about climate change, learn about the impacts in the Northeast, specifically as they pertain to agriculture, and also start to learn about mitigation strategies for greenhouse gases. A core piece of the program is that people who enroll in it, the fellows, as we are calling them, share what they learn with their peers, whether those peers are other farmers or other professional ag advisors. And I should say our definition of ag advisor is really anyone who works directly with farmers on management issues. So you could be working with extension, you could be working with a soil conservation district, you could be in a role with private industry where you are on the ground providing technical assistance. But really at the kind of programmatic level, you work with farmers day to day. The program is 1 year long, and I'm going to describe a little bit more about what that looks like in a couple of slides. Applicants who are eligible to apply are either commercial farmers, and for this program, it's vegetable and fruit farmers, specifically small fruit, or ag advisors who work with those types of farmers. The idea behind the program is that you move through it in teams with one farmer paired with one ag advisor. And I'll talk a little bit more in a bit, but the idea is that you could either apply as a pair, you could pick each other out ahead of time, or you can apply solo. And when we go through the applications and select applicants, one of the things that we will be attending to are potential pairings that we can help people make. There is no charge to participate in the program. There are some stipends available for some specific activities within the program for some of the participants, and I will talk more in detail about those as well. You are eligible to apply for the program, as I mentioned, if you're a commercial farmer or an ag advisor from the states that are listed in that orange box at the bottom of the slide. So the states are Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, West Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. This is the USDA Northeast region. The fellowship, as I mentioned, takes place over the course of a year. It kicks off with a 2-day workshop where we will discuss climate change adaptation and mitigation, specifically as it pertains to Northeast ag. over the course of the year that follows the workshop, the pairs that the farmer and ag advisor pairs will work together to conduct a series of activities that I will talk about in a second. And then the program concludes with a second 2-day workshop where we will have additional educational programming, but also it'll be a time for reflection and talking as a group about what went well, I think, and what could be improved. One of the big benefits of this program is that we're really hoping to develop this cohort of people who will stay in touch in the future and continue to support each other as climate adaptation and mitigation becomes even more relevant and pressing. So this is just a little schematic to kind of show you visually. I'm a visual learner, so maybe some of you are too. Again, spring 2021, we'll have a 2-day workshop. Over the course of the year, you'll work together in your pairs with the support of our educational team, and then concluding in spring of 2022 with a second in-person or remote 2-day workshop. So what can you expect to learn if you become a fellow with this program? As I mentioned, we're talking about climate change impacts in the Northeast, what they mean for agriculture, and what the adaptation and mitigation strategies are that might be relevant to particular farms. I think one of the things that we were very cognizant of when we designed this program is that everybody's situation is different, and adaptation is going to look very different farm by farm. So the activities and the learning are really kind of based around taking deep dives into particular farm operations and looking at individual farm operations and going through the process of climate change risk management. But another important component of the program is talking about climate change communication skills and how we speak about climate change, what we can do to integrate climate change into professional programming if you're an ag advisor, or informal discussions if we're talking with peers, such as other commercial growers. As I mentioned, that pairing piece between farmers and agricultural advisors is really a core piece of this program. We believe that farmers who are actively engaged in adapting on their farms have a really important and unique perspective on climate adaptation and what it will require. And ag advisors also have very important perspectives to share and a lot of experience with outreach and kind of engaging farming communities and networks in the broader conversation of climate change. So as you work together over the course of the year, should you join the program, some of the concrete things that you'll be doing is you'll be conducting at least one on-farm climate change risk assessment. This is a process that we've developed over the last couple of years. As we've designed this curriculum, the curriculum was designed with the support of a NIFA, USDA NIFA grant. It was peer reviewed by farmers and extension and other outreach personnel from around the Northeast. So these are activities that have been vetted. So on-farm climate change risk assessment being the kind of foundational activity that everyone will have experience doing. This will include an economic analysis of at least one adaptation activity, really getting to, I think, one of the big limitations of adapting quickly to climate change or as quickly as we need to. How much is it going to cost and is it going to be worth it? And what's the effect on farm businesses going to be? We will also be asking the fellows who are ag advisors to make some concrete plans about integrating climate change into current programming, whether that's business support, farm viability programming, agronomic support that you provide to farmers. Climate change is a big and far-reaching issue, and it will affect us in all of our different programming areas. So working with folks to think about how it applies to them is a core piece of this program as well. And then lastly, all fellows will be asked to complete 3 outreach activities. And it's really up to the fellow pairs what this looks like, although we are ready to support them and have a short list of kind of low-hanging fruit that we think would be easy for folks to accomplish. It could be a newsletter article, it could be a blog post, it could be a conference presentation at a commercial growers conference. But there are lots of opportunities. The the main point is to share your experience thinking about climate adaptation and mitigation, share your experiences actually implementing some of these things on your farm if you so wish, and really kind of elevating the conversation about climate adaptation in our region. Some other optional activities that people could choose to do, pairs could choose to do, that we can support, but we don't necessarily have financial support for, are things like on-farm trials, on-farm demonstrations, and certainly if someone has a good idea about something they want to try, we are game to work with you and think about how we can help you achieve it. I should say that when we designed this program and when we proposed it to SARE, it became really clear to us, specifically around the outreach activities, that doing outreach is something that's within the purview of many ag advisors' professional roles, not so much for farmers. And there is a time associated with kind of creating these outreach products or presenting at conferences or things like that. And for that reason, we have a stipend built into the program for farmer fellows specifically, for up to 25 hours working on these outreach products at a rate of $50 an hour. So should you decide to enroll in our awesome program, what you can expect to get from us are some really careful attention from a program educator, those nice folks that you saw up on the first slide or the second slide. We will be working with you over the course of the year to make sure that you meet your goals and answer any questions that you might have. You'll also have a cohort of peers, of people who are dedicated and interested in thinking about climate change and how it applies to agriculture in our region. We have built into our program the ability to create additional educational materials that are really guided by the interests and needs of the fellows. So if there's something that's not on our list of topics that you are really fascinated by or think is a really important topic, over the course of the year, we have money built into our budget to start developing some educational resources that will be of interest to you. We also have travel funds for travel to in-person workshops and stipends for farmer fellows working on the outreach component of the fellowship. And I should say the travel funds are for both farmer fellows and ag advisor fellows. So as I mentioned, the curriculum was developed over the course of the last couple of years with support from USDA NIFA. We have funding from SARE and the other folks that I mentioned at the top of the slides to execute this vegetable pilot, which we're really excited about. The curriculum is open to anyone, so it's available on our website, and we're excited to add to it through this program. Applications are due October 1st, and applicants are going to be notified of the decision by November 20th. As I mentioned, the first workshop will be sometime in the late winter next year. And the commitment is for a full 12 months. When we are reviewing applications, what the review committee is going to be looking for is we're going to be looking for a demonstrated commitment to learning about climate change, a willingness to share what you learn with folks who are not in the program, the ability to complete the entire program. We recognize a full year is a big commitment, and motivation to consider changing your farm or your program. Really, people who are ready to dig in and do some of this work. In addition, we're going to be looking for a complement of folks from around the region. So we're hoping for a good geographical spread. And when we're pairing people up, if you don't apply in a pair, one of the first things we'll look at is kind of regional similarities. If you're applying from a state with someone else from that state who might be a good match, that would be one of the first things we would look at. But there's also a lot of reason, I think, to think about pairing people in different states. And those are conversations that we would likely have with you before we made our final decision. Of course, there's a big hiccup in everybody's plans who's trying to do outreach programming this year. We don't know what the world is going to look like next winter. So with that, we are kind of reserving the option to hold the first two-person workshop in an online format that would reduce travel Our preference is to do it in person, but of course that might not be possible. So that being said, the online application that we have linked in the notice for this webinar includes a small series of questions about what would be possible or of interest to you. So do fill out the application if you're interested, but also be sure to let us know what your limitations might be in terms of bandwidth or software or hardware. And then we have a couple of different options for, do you want it to be 2 days online, 8 hours versus, spread it out over the course of a week kind of thing. So with that, I'm going to thank our sponsors again, the Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, SARE group, through a Professional Development Award, the USDA Northeast Climate Hub, the Rutgers Climate Change Institute, and the New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station. And now, if you will excuse me, if you have questions, you can continue to type them into the chat box. And I'm now going to invite my colleagues, either Erin or Marjorie, who have been monitoring the chat box, to curate those questions, and we will dig into it.
Hi, Rachel. It's Marjorie. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Hi.
Okay. Our first question comes from Megan Chauner. And Megan's question is whether there's a size limit for the participating farm, how small or how large a farm can be.
That's a great question. We do not have a size limit for the participating farm, as long as it is a commercial operation.
Thank you. We have only one other question also from Megan, which is whether or not it matters if the farm is organic or conventionally managed.
It does not. No. Also a good question.
Okay. And from Virginia Lamb, hello, Virginia. Virginia asks, what is the weekly time commitment to the training in terms of time?
So the training part of the program is really going to be at the 2-day workshops. So the first 2-day workshop being this coming late winter, and the second workshop being a year from then. Barring interruption from COVID, they would be 2 full days of training. But then in terms of the work that would be required over the course of the year, that is to some degree up to the pair that you're working in. Each pair will be developing their own year-long work plan. And I think there is an option to get really deep in and do some pretty time-intensive work if you have that interest. There's also the option to do just the risk assessment and the financial analysis and the outreach activities, in which case, I don't think that is more than a week's worth of work over the course of a year.
Okay. From Helen Costello, is the program open to new farmers?
Yes, absolutely. We would love to have new farmers apply.
And from Julie Fine, I'm curious about how technical the content will be. Most of the farmers I work with have been thinking about climate change adaptations and would be interested in advanced curriculum and really technical work.
The curriculum that we have developed so far is actually up on the website. So I think probably the best move would be to look at the slide decks and the teaching tools that are already up there to gauge whether or not you think it would be appropriate or of interest to the farmers that you work with. The other piece that I would put out there is that if the level of technical information isn't quite right, if more is desired, that there's an opportunity for us to kind of curate and facilitate that and either make it available to fellows over the course of the year or at that second workshop. We really tried to build it in such a way that it was flexible and we could meet the needs of the folks who were enrolled.
Rachel, those are all the questions we've seen so far. If folks have here's a new one. Let's just make sure I have it right.
A couple more are coming in, Mark.
Okay, yes, thank you. Well, Virginia asks, Will there be opportunities for participant teams to see examples of possible projects?
Oh, that is a great point. Well, it's a wonderful idea. This would be the initial group of fellows. So we wouldn't have example products yet. I would say this group might be the folks who would develop products that might be used as examples in the future, in all honesty. And I will just follow that up with saying, when we did the curriculum development project for the first stage of this work, we actually had 4 modules based on different sectors. So this program is just piloting the vegetable and fruit module, but there are other curriculum modules that are specific for tree fruit growers and for forestry managers and for dairy managers. And certainly there's opportunity for sharing the things that get developed through this program across the different modules. So we're hoping to build up a little bit of a library, let's say.
Okay. We also have a question here from Tara Roselle asking, I'm wondering if pairs are strictly accepted or not accepted together. Can, say, the advisor member of a pair be accepted, but not the farmer, and then paired to an accepted farmer, or vice versa?
Oh, that is interesting. We haven't had that discussion yet. I would say that if you have a partner in mind, applying with them is a great idea. And based on this question, I think we will be attentive to each individual applicant also. But we weren't thinking about it beforehand, but now we are. So thank you.
Okay. Charles Marshall asks, what are some examples of the adaptations to apply, example, high tunnel or other means?
Right. So there are high tunnels are examples. I think one of the fundamental pieces of this process is that you have to identify a risk that a particular farm faces. So if a farm, for example, is tilling and operates on a slope, erosion might be a bigger issue, especially erosion having to do with having extreme rainfall events. And so the adaptation strategies that would be most useful for that farm might look different than a farm that is, say, in a floodplain and where the river is likely to break its bank in a flooding event. So I think there's a wide variety of practices that are really common, either in the conservation world or in just in terms of kind of improved production. But what we're talking about is applying those practices strategically, specifically to manage climate risk. Not to say that there wouldn't be co-benefits to doing something like putting up a hoop house or managing your erosion using cover crops or something like that. But the process that we're hoping to facilitate is more about decision making and being responsive to the particular risks that a particular farm faces. In terms of over the course of the year of the program, whether a farm fellow would decide to apply any practices, I think depends on the resources that they have available. We don't have the capacity, and Sarah doesn't allow us to do things like make mini grants for equipment purchases or putting up greenhouses or things like that. So we're not requiring that people actually implement anything in order to succeed in the fellowship program, if that makes any sense.
Thanks, Rachel. Well, we could give you folks another minute or two. If you have any other questions, we'll just wait just another minute. If anyone wants to type a question into all panelists is the best place to type them into. But for now, we're close. We've hit them all.
These are great questions.
Yeah.
We should also say that if people have questions that come up, either as you're going through the application process or as you're mulling it over, that you should, by all means, feel free to email me, and I'll be happy to add your question to our running Q&A list, which we'll be posting so that folks with the same question might be able to benefit from our answers as well. And I'm also happy to just chat more with anyone who thinks they might be interested. We also hope that you might consider sharing the announcement with other folks in your network, and especially in the Northeast region, who you think might be good participants, might be game.
So Rachel, I don't see any other.
Wait, one just came in. Hang on.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So, okay, we have actually a couple more. Communication skills is a common climate change tool. Why? From Edward Peters.
I think because there has been some research conducted in the Corn Belt in the Midwest that says things like we shouldn't be talking about climate change with farmers because that they'll just shut off because there's too much of a political divide around it. And there's been some pretty explicit advice given to ag advisors, including extension folks, that if you want to talk to farmers about climate change, you should talk to them about extreme weather. And I think that what we are hoping to do with this program, specifically with the climate communication piece, is give people tools to navigate those conversations, but also to kind of increase the commonness of talking about climate change, to make it more normal and to make it less politicized, because it is something that we are all going to have to deal with. And I think that there is kind of a little bit of an imperative to get that conversation going in a more robust way. So that's why we focused on climate communication as an essential skill. And also because there's a good component of this program that is about sharing information with your peers. And even though there is a very tight relationship between climate change and extreme weather, they're not exactly the same thing. So we're hoping that we can help people navigate that space.
Rachel, we have a request if we could just state somewhere again how many fellows will be accepting for the first year.
Oh, sure. Actually, I think we might have left that out of the slides. My apologies. We will be accepting 30 fellows total. That's our cap. So 15 of those would be farmers and 15 would be ag advisors.
Great. So we have no more questions. As far as I can tell. If anyone has a question, we'll just give you just another minute. I think that's it. Again, as Rachel said, folks can send us notes as well, and we will continue to upload them. We'll be putting an FAQ together.
Thank you, everyone, for signing on today. We hope you apply. Tell your friends.